it's very rare that a strong GM like Hikaru Nakamura goes down in less than 15 moves. Yes, you heard that right, and that happened in 2009, where he was playing against Julio Becerra Rivero, who is also a strong GM. Both of them had a rating difference of about 140 odd, but still very closely contested game. It had to be, and it starts off with E4 by Julio. Here, Nakamura responds with c5, Sicilian defense. And when you play the Sicilian, you expect something like opponent will try to put out all the pieces quickly and maybe castle on the queen side and push these pawns eventually for an attack on the king side. But what happens here is knight to f3 is played, and you can also always go for d6 here. D6, or then you can go for a6, the knight off variation, preventing bishop coming to b5. You can play the dragon variation by playing g6 and bishop to g7, eyeing this wonderful diagonal where most likely the opponent will be castling because you are playing the Sicilian defense. You will put your knight on c6. Your position looks strong. Yes, you don't have that great center advantage, but still your pieces will have a nice way of developing. And here, after knight to f3, Nakamura responds with knight to f6, now, which is not a good choice, at least these days. And it's because of a very logical and simple reason. A move like e5 can be played straight away, which actually impacts you because you just move the a knight to develop, and then you have to move it again. That's what happens. Knight to d5. Now, you can always go for a move like pawn to c4 here, which looks very natural, attacking the knight, gaining in a pawn, gaining some more space in the center. But what that does is allows the knight to go back on to c6, and once knight goes back to c6, you are going to play some point of time the move d5 as well, hitting the center back. So basically, you just made space for the central pawn by moving the knight, and you actually help the opponent doing so by playing c4. So rather than going with this line, Rivero goes with knight to c3, and it's a nice move, and I'll tell you why. Because if you now take, if the opponent does take here, let's say Hikaru takes, it's not a bad position to be in for white, because yes, you will have center pawns, but look at this pawn grabbing the most space in the center. You have queen coming out, very nice. You have bishops both. Now the diagonals are completely opened. So the position is very nice to attack. This is a very wonderful position for white to attack. And it can become tough for black to defend as well, because suddenly we'll see bishop coming out, and then you can't even play e6. The bishop can come from here as well, and then you're just going to play a6 and try to kick this bishop back eventually. It can cause a lot of disruptions in your plans. So here, of course, Nakamura doesn't go for knight takes, but plays a solid move e6, trying to defend the knight, which does get captured. Now, why capturing here is the best move as well, because again, you have just developed the piece. Why to move it again? The reason is very simple, because once you take, you have eliminated the only piece that was developed in the game for black. Black had only developed a knight from here to here, and then it gets captured. And white is again leading an advantage, has the very nice forward d5 pawn. You have a very wonderful knight lined up. Bishop is going to come out. You are going to strike for the center as well by playing d4, which consolidates your center as well. So it looks good for white. That's why taking the knight was the best move. Here comes a d4, as expected, striking the center, making sure the bishop's diagonal is also coming out, and then bishop can take part in an attack as well. Now here, if Nakamura takes, it's bad, of course, because queen takes is a strong move. Yes, you might be thinking that knight can chase it away, but here the problem is the pawn on d5 is not defended, and you lose two central pawns. C and E both are lost. D pawn looks weak already because it hasn't moved. If it moves, of course, pawn can take, and things look bad here. So that's why Nakamura doesn't take the pawn, but instead goes with a knight to c6, attacking the pawn twice now, and it's defended twice with the knight and the queen, so not an issue. But Rivero tries to dismantle the center completely. He takes the pawn, Yes, that gives advantage to Nakamura by taking the pawn with the bishop, like developing a piece. But suddenly you realize, oh no, my d5 pawn is hanging. So d5 pawn goes out now. And just in case you're thinking, okay, there's an attack coming with knight hanging, the queen coming here, bishop can also come in. The other bishop can also line up onto c4 towards this diagonal. You just must be thinking, yes, Nakamura should castle quickly. The problem with castle quickly is that you lose the bishop. It's not defended because generally your pawn is on d6 because of good development. But because you played the knight early, the pawn came in, you couldn't play d6. You couldn't defend the bishop. That's the problem. You cannot castle here after the queen has taken. So you have to defend the bishop or move it backwards. Now, what Nakamura does is play d6, which is also a good, best move as per the computer. And here, the best move is to take this pawn. Simple. Try to take the pawn out. You might go with queen exchange as well. This line can even look like this if queen trades happen. White is better here because after you develop the bishop, you are about to castle, and let's just say this happens. White is in a better position, has the rook file completely open. The bishop pair looks stronger, and that's why white has advantage of 2.2. So this looks bad for black, and Nakamura, of course, doesn't want to go into this line. But actually, Rivero can. But Rivero comes up with another idea, which is bishop coming to c4. Now, bishop to c4 is threatening checkmate now on to f7. So you have to be careful. And of course, if you just think of castling, then central pawn is also lost. And then if you take back with the bishop, then you suddenly see that again the same point you can castle, and this battery is already nice. And the knight is also about to come into the picture very quickly, but this still is a playable position. But what now, and the best move here is to play bishop to e6, which eyes this battery. The queen will go back, and once the queen goes back, you can either continue attacking the queen, you can even castle, because then if the trade happens, yes, you have some center weakness, but this is again a playable position here as well. uh, and if you go back, what happens in the game, Nakamura doesn't play both the options, goes with queen to e7, which is a blunder. Queen to e7 trying to defend the pawn here because it can be simply met with bishop to g5. That's what happens in the game. Bishop comes out onto g5. And now look at white's position. Everything is developed. There is nothing stopping white from castling on either side of the board. Meanwhile, black is stuck, cannot castle straight away. Queen is being attacked. Uh, your center pawn is a weakness. Things like those can happen, but not straight away because, of course, your queen is here. Pawn cannot move right away. So again, bishop to e6 looks very natural, but Nakamura still doesn't play it. Plays f6 instead, because he thought that okay, if I go with this line, opponent can take my queen, and if of course the trades happen eventually, if you see, all of these trades are okay for white too. White will still come up in a good advantage. 2.7, 2.5 is very high advantage at such level. You can castle queenside and look at the structure. It's very nice. uh, let's go back in the game where after f6 is played by Nakamura, Rivero castles now on the queen side. Now you can take the central pawn with the knight, or the pawn. Anything is fine. Here Nakamura takes with the pawn, but Rivero doesn't bother taking anything. Gets the other rook into the open file, and now this is a completely lost position. Why so? Because you really can't do much if you castle. You can't castle, firstly because it's a wonderful diagonal, very controlled diagonal. If you place bishop in between, you lose the bishop because there are two pieces and you're defending it only once. You can if you go for taking the bishop, let's say, it looks a natural move to take the bishop out. Now knight takes e5, and the point is this is a wonderful pin. Whenever the knight is moved from here, your queen is lost. So if you try to still take it, still the same thing happens. Rook takes, it's defended with the queen. your queen is lost, and it's actually mate in 8 here if you see the engine evaluation. So there isn't much what Nakamura can do here after queen side castle and the rook coming in. And see, the best is to put the rook onto f8. That's the best what can be done. And still, if you see, there's a move like rook takes on e5 is also fine. Knight takes on e5, still the same threats. And you cannot move the queen also to any significant safer place. If you try to exchange queens, maybe instead, like putting it backwards here, then again it's a mate on f7. So you cannot try to exchange queens also. You cannot put the bishop in between because still your the knight will take the pawn. And it's too late to castle either side. This way it's already controlled with this wonderful battery. And this side also looks bad because already the attack is very strong with knight takes on e5, letting the bishop hang. Because I explained, it's not a problem even if, say, let's say knight takes here, and you try to maybe castle and save the game. That's not going to happen, right? Because a lot of attack is happening. If you take, then again your queen is lost. If you take the bishop, then a lot of attack is here already. This lose the queen on the spot because of a discovered check. If you try to put bishop in between, then again queen simply goes back. It's okay. You can even trade off maybe. That is also not bad option, because after the trades, look at this position. If all the trades happen and let's say bishop goes back, bishop can take, opponent can take here. It's a lost game completely. Look at the position of these rooks. You can still not castle. If you can just put your king up, bishop will try to control this, and your knight is pinned as well. Expect a move like f4, and you cannot do. You lose the knight as well. So it's very devastating position, and all that happened because of one blunder, which was queen to e7, not playing the most natural looking move, which is bishop to e6, which prevents this kind of a situation at least. Because once the queen goes back, you can definitely castle quickly and make sure that you are in a decent position to play this game. And the best move is, of course, something else, which is like knight to b4, attacks the queen. Queen simply moves again. Maybe you can take the bishop now after opponent takes. Now you maybe castle. Now you maybe put the rook onto c8. Both look strong, and the game can continue. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was instructive, and I hope you don't play the Sicilian this way and don't end up losing badly. Yes, sometimes it can happen to the very best as well, as just we saw, and I hope it was instructive. If it was, please do subscribe to the channel, and I shall see you tomorrow with some interesting and instructive content like always. Thanks for your time. Take care. Bye bye.